Alright, I want to start this off by saying that this might have been the most well-made episode of RWBY in the entire series so far. From the directing, from the screenwriting, to the performances, everything was so well done. I am so impressed with the RWBY crew right now. I want to do this reaction a little bit differently, because similar to episode 3 with Salem and Ozma's backstory, there's not much. I feel like there's a couple of things here and there I do want to say. But since most of it was just generally good, I feel like that wouldn't make for a very good video. I instead want to do something a little bit different. So, I recently just graduated and got my degree in creative film and media. So I have learned the techniques of how to create a good story with a visual medium. There are two aspects to this: the story on the paper and the story on the screen. You have to have a good script to begin with, and then how you execute that script visually is equally important, if not more important. So I've learned the importance of different blocking, different camera angles, what's on the screen visually. I've learned these things, and I want to go over this episode and try to describe exactly how this is the most well-executed episode of RWBY. Alright, let's dive right in. Alright, so first things first, no conflict in this episode came out of nowhere. Everything was set up well beforehand. In the last episode, the girls were talking about how tired they were, and it was well done because both Yang and Weiss word it the same exact way as each other, so it was easy for us to notice that as an audience member. Second of all, Crow's alcoholism was established long back in Volume 3, and we saw the, wine cellar with Ruby and Weiss in the last episode. So when we see Crow with bottles of wine drinking, it has been well established, and we get it immediately. One thing I've noticed is that Crow's drinking has always been used as comedy in the past, and this is the first episode that it's seen as an actually alcoholic perspective. Maybe RT realized that it was kind of weird to have the same volume as each other, Uncle Crow being Drunkle Crow coming back in with Oscar in the beginning, and then Weiss talking about her mom and her drinking problems. There's a bit of a back and forth there that don't really mix with each other. It is good to see, and it is an interesting direction for the characters in general. Another important thing is everything that stops the girls from leaving was well established. The storm appeared, they can't leave, but then everything that they found to help them leave also was well established. They found the flatbed, and they have Bumblebee. Crow, in this beginning, he alludes to his bad luck. The whole, I don't feel good about this place, especially with me around. It reminds the audience, yes, he is bad luck. So then, when he accidentally pops the tire on the flatbed, another problem that stops the girls from moving forward, it all ties together perfectly. That's how a script should work. Conflict should happen based on the things you have established and set up. They should not feel like they come out of nowhere. And sometimes I feel like RWBY just kind of pulls problems out of a hat sometimes. Suddenly there's an issue the girls need to deal with, and the way they go about trying to fix the issues always feels also kind of like it comes out of nowhere. In Volume 2, a good example I can think of, Blake is upset and depressed about the White Fang. Alright, well, we knew she left the White Fang, and I guess we can see that it's been bothering her. We can see that, her depression has gotten to a point where it's not healthy for her. And the other girls don't really do anything about it. They kind of actually facilitate it by trying to go after the White Fang. Then it gets to, a breaking point, and their solution is they talk about it with each other, and they cry, and they mope, and then Yang goes out, hunts her down, and, initiates a conversation with a pen, a laser pen, which didn't add anything other than, get it, she's a cat. And then she tells her story about Raven. It was such a roundabout process for this issue, and I can see where the issue popped up, but it felt like the conclusion, however well done it was, could have been done better. Something I noticed about this episode is that everyone's performances was really well done. Barbara, during the last couple of volumes, her performance kind of waned here and there. She's always been, in my opinion, the best of the RWBY girls, maybe tied with Kara as Weiss. But Lindsay's performances, RWBY, actually was pretty good. RWBY usually bothers me with her voice. She tends to sound fake and forced. I don't know what Lindsay's done. Maybe it was better direction, or maybe she's gone out and practiced it on her own accord, but RWBY sounded like an actual character now. I can still tell that's not like a natural voice for her, that like high-pitched thing that RWBY does. But just overall, RWBY's performance is 10 out of 10, especially when she gets angry or like really scared. Here is another important thing. Maria explains Bartleby and gives us some like insight that he was a bit of a schemer, that he was always plotting ways to help his settlement. This is the correct way to do superfluous lore. We don't actually need to know this information to have the plot of the episode progress. It just helps add a little bit of spice and flavor to the world that they're living in, which is important. You should have these things, but they're not always necessary. In the past, I feel like RT has always overemphasized the spices and flavors in their stories. Like, you can tell they have big old backstories and lore for, like, every town they go to, every character they meet. Everything they've interacted with throughout volumes 4 and 5 felt like it had too much of a backstory planned for it. And if this episode came out during volumes 4 or 5, I feel like the backstory of Bartleby and his settlement would have been done in a really long, drawn-out, sort of World of Remnant-esque story. The closest thing I can think of is Crow's God's story around the campfire. Put too much emphasis on this thing that doesn't actually matter to explain something that we got otherwise. Like I said, it's not bad to have these things in a show, but this is the correct way to add it. Just have Maria explain it quickly and easily to our audience. It makes sense that she explains it, because she started to read the book, Oscar asked her about it, and then she explained it to him. It adds us a little bit of extra knowledge, and it fit in nicely with the world that we're in right now. I'm glad RWBY didn't get all, like, butthurt when Maria got all sassy with her about going to bed. I like Yang and Maria's, like, argumentative relationship they have with each other. But if everyone was like that with Maria, then it would have gotten tiresome. I like seeing RWBY display a spectrum of emotion. We see her get angry with Crow, fed up, concerned, consoling. RWBY, I feel like, has been the most limited of all the girls so far, maybe even of all the characters in the show. They tend to always stick her to either happy and optimistic or determined to do the right thing. And seeing her actually get sad and just get angry, it's good. It's good, it's fleshing out her character. She feels like a real character in this volume. The tired aspect of the characters in the beginning is well done. It's easy to guess that it's a Grimm or some sort of force that like killed off the whole town that's making the girls tired, but they built it up to it well. Seeing everyone just sitting around talking about how tired they are, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people out there who just thought they were exhausted after this long journey they've had. It's the shot of the three girls standing next to each other looking at RWBY, and you can see their eyes are clearly differently animated. They look just dark and soulless compared to how they normally look. It's well done, and it's subtle animation that gets the point across very well. Usually when people talk about good animation in RWBY, even me included, it's like small things, like the setting looks pretty, their hair is nice, facial expressions. Something I really like about this episode is the emphasis on body acting. Like, Blake is hunched up and crunched over next to Oscar. They look tired. Even Yang standing next to RWBY. RWBY's got her hands on her hips and she's holding her head up. Yang is just kind of flumped over, her arms to her side. All the girls are like that, really. There's clearly they're tired, but their bodies are portraying it also. I feel like RT has struggled in the past with what to do with their characters' bodies during a scene. Lots of times they will just keep their arms to the side, do a couple of simple hand motions, maybe. Seeing a little bit extra effort here and there really adds to the scene. One thing I wondered is why the effects of the Grimm didn't really hit RWBY as much as it did the other girls, not till later. Going back and rewatching the episode a couple times, Maria also never really got hit with the effects of the apathy, so I'm wondering if it's a silver eye thing. Maybe Grimm don't affect them as much as it affects other people. Now, you could chalk up their conversation about why even bother trying to get to Atlas as a part of the apathy's effect on them, but they do have a point. There doesn't really seem to be a reason for the girls and Oscar and Crow to make it to Atlas. What's the point? Salem already broke through Beacon and Haven to get to the relics. Yeah, she didn't succeed in getting them, but it's proven that she knows how to do so. Those don't seem really like safe places to hold the relics onto anymore, and if they really do think that it's pointless to try to stop her in the first place, why even bother? So this thing that the camera does right here, when RWBY says that she is tired, and you can see the effects of the apathy finally start to hit her when she's holding the relic over the well. This is a really smart thing to do camera-wise. Usually what they do is they kind of have static shots throughout the show. and that's fine, maybe a slight zoom or a slight pan, but with this kind of camera movement, it adds an emphasis to what is happening. They've used low camera angles before in the usual way that people use it. Low camera angles often give people position of power. They look big, they look strong. They've done this before with Ironwood in the past, because he was supposed to look big and strong. This is the other way you can use a low camera angle. It starts face forward with RWBY, and then it tilts down as she starts to think about dropping it down the well. This is a visual representation of her mindset. She's thinking straightforward and clearly, but her mind starts to fall down and slip. She's getting tired, she's getting exhausted. The camera is representing her mindset that she is starting to fall. And on top of that, it establishes her walking up into the well as the camera moves down to the well. There are several things happening with the camera here. All of them are important. Something I feel like RT doesn't think about is what the camera can tell us with where it's positioned on screen and how it moves throughout the screen. Something I noticed in Volume 3, they tend to over-move the camera. Like, slight head movements, you'll see the camera, like, wobbling around to keep their head in center frame, which was fine, but then going back and, like, once you notice it, it's really distracting and kind of jarring during, like, simple scenes, like Yang being upset that Blake ran away. We didn't need that much camera movement. Another really strong point about this episode is the sound design and the music. Like, throughout the whole thing, it's on point. I don't know much about sound design in general to explain it well, but it establishes the feeling and the mood of the scene very well and cuts away and changes at the exact times it should. This is actually something RT has done very well throughout all their shows in the past. But I feel like with Volumes 4 and 5, due to their very clearly rushed production, it kind of didn't have that much of it. If I had to think of one nitpick for this episode that I can think of, it's sometimes in the well it's really dark. Like when I have the blinds closed and the lights off, I can see it very well. It's well done. But just a little bit of light and I tend to just lose all of it. And the brightness on my laptop is turned all the way up. I feel like it's easier to be scared of something if it's easier to see something. Something RT does here that is really well done. We see the girls walking down the well at the same time as we're watching Maria figure out the apathy. This adds tension, because the quicker the shots change between each other, it automatically builds inside of us as a viewer. This is the thing that the characters are trying to puzzle solve this with us. Like, RWBY's like, I can't find it, and Blake just turns your light off. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like sometimes they don't always think about the straightforward, easy answer. Blake burning down her house is a good example. Trying to fight Ilya in her own mansion, why not turn the lights back on? Instead, she burns the house down. I feel like RT tends to jump over certain natural conclusions the character would make to make something more visually entertaining. Which, visually, it is fun, but story-wise, it's not good. Your characters should think and act like people. They shouldn't be bending over backwards to make your script look good. If it doesn't make sense for the character to do something, they shouldn't do it. I have to give the RWBY crew major props for the apathy. Its design is awesome, its ability is super cool. Something RT does is RWBY does very, very well when the enemy is a Grimm. The Knuckleavi, the apathy, even the Nevermore back in the Emerald Forest in Volume 1. When it's a Grimm and it's just a mindless monster, it's much more well executed than when they try to have a person. Maybe it's because monsters don't have to scheme and connive and smirk and snark. You don't have to worry about the motivations of a monster, it's just a monster of evil. You're not sitting there playing Zelda wondering, why does that bokoblin want to stab me? It's a monster. It's just a mindless creature that wants to kill me. And I think that's RT's biggest detriment, is they overthink their villains when the Grimm are arguably the best villain they could have. Also, since the Grimm are more easily designed, I feel like they can play around with it a lot more. Neo just came back. Let's use her as an example. If Team RWBY is fighting Neo, how many things do we need to think about with her design? First of all, there's her size and her stature. That needs to take into account. There's her weapon, and then there's her semblance. Those are two very important details. Then there's her personal mindset. For example, if she's standing next to Torchwick and he gets stabbed, she is probably going to stop to try to help him with his stab wound. And then there's the natural mindset of just people in general. If she's fighting near a cliff, she's going to be worried about the cliffside. And then there's all kinds of other tiny small details that you can take into account. Like, she's mute. How's that going to affect her combat in any way, if it would? With a Grimm, it tends to just be its size and its one ability it can do. You're fighting a Nevermore. It is very big. It can fly. It can shoot its feathers at you. Those are the 3 things you need to worry about. It has no, issues with other people. If it sees another Nevermore get shot, it's not going to care. So with the Grimm's much more limited abilities for combat, it tends to lead to stronger situations for our heroes to have to work with. The entire scene under the well is really cool and really tense. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and it was just amazing. It does a really good job of building tension, not only with the soundtrack, with that fast-paced violin. It was cutting between the characters running around, trying to find a way to go to, seeing them talk to each other, and hearing the panic in their voices. Just everything has worked together to make it that nail-biting scene it turned out to be. All this tension builds up to the climactic point where all the girls are tired and they're on their hands and knees, and Maria finds an exit. We understand that it's the wine cellar from earlier. Seeing the girls this close, but knowing that they themselves can't help it, it's a well done, well thought out tension scene that doesn't need combat to make it this exciting. Seeing Blake lying on the floor, giving up, and Ruby trying to crawl towards her, that's all we need to build to an exciting climax. Then the fact that the next part builds right on top of that. The girls do make it back up, but then they fall right back down again. This close, yet everything is pulling them down. Everything seems to be stopping them, and you can see how frantic and scared and worried they are. And it really does take a miracle for the girls to happen to escape. I am so happy Ruby is finally figuring out how to use her silver eyes. After learning about it back in Volume 3 and doing fucking nothing with it this entire time, not even asking anyone about it, finally, we're getting to her silver eyes! Even the build-up to Weiss's, bottle flame maneuver was well done. They even say in the last episode, we'll never have to worry about making a fire. Everything has been set up so well in this episode. Every little thing you can think of, every small detail. Crow's alcoholism. Setting up a fire. His bad luck stopping them in their tracks again. Everything was well done and well thought out, and that is how you set up a story. I feel like RT tends to waffle around a lot with setting things up, but then also having superfluous things here and there tends to drown things out. A good example I can think of, Ruby was supposed to learn hand-to-hand combat. So we have one scene with her fighting Oscar, and he headbutts her. And then we talk about it not at all. We don't talk about her hand-to-hand combat training anymore. We don't see anyone use that move ever again. We just finally, at the very, very end of the volume, Ruby headbutts Mercury. And that was supposed to be the payoff. Since they had set it up, yes, but it was all for nothing in the end. Because it was so pointless and meaningless throughout the story, I hadn't even realized that was the setup for it. This is how you do it right. You say or do these actions in a way that stick with the viewer, and then you have payoff. And if it would have taken longer for us to get here, they would have continued to bring it up, I assume, because that is how you do it well. So I was really surprised that we started to touch on Ruby's silver eyes. I think everyone kind of assumed Maria had silver eyes. I mean, in the opening, if you've seen any of Mother's Basement's What's in an OP, then you're going to figure out that shot of zooming in on Ruby's eye to zoom in on Maria's eye, it kind of implies it a lot. So I was surprised it happened so early, and I was wondering why I was surprised it happened so early. Jin was executed early on, and so was Salem and Ozma's backstory. And then I realized what happened. This volume just finished its second arc. The early volumes of RWBY used to have arcs throughout the volumes. There was, for Volume 1, for example, there was the setting up RWBY's team arc, then setting up RWBY as a leader arc, there's the Jean arc, and then the White Fang arc. Series of episodes, 2 or 3 episodes apiece, that would lead to an arc that was solved within those episodes, but would also lead to the greater story of the volume, leading up to the White Fang arc at the end. I realized Volumes 4 and 5 set up my expectations to not think that would happen anymore. Volumes 4 and 5 made me believe that nothing can get resolved until the last couple of episodes in the season. But this volume has gone back to the couple of episode arc technique that they had before. The first 3 episodes was the Salem and Ozpin backstory arc, and now we just finished what I'm going to call the apathy arc. It resolved itself in these episodes and also added to the greater story. We've established Cinder and Neo, and we've also started to establish the lamp in Ruby's eyes, and that's why we're getting to these things. This adds to the show a lot more. With the way Volumes 4 and 5 worked, it stretched it out, and like how I've been saying, they faltered, where this episode has reached greater and greater heights than ever before. Going back to the arc system is a good way to set up the lore and the story and have things progress and have it feel like things are happening. Things happened in these last 6 episodes. Things have happened in this story, both from the grand perspective and on a small scale. That was a problem with Volumes 4 and 5 that they have resolved, and I'm very, very happy about. Was this episode like the end-all be-all most amazing thing in the world? Maybe not. They've had good episodes before. PvP is a good example. Kura Yuri, another good one. But I think this is the first time that they really, really sat down and figured this episode out. If I didn't know any better, I would think the writers and directors and animators of this volume was different from Volumes 4 and 5. I don't know what changed with Miles and Carrie between Volumes 5 and Volume 6, but I'm glad it did, because this is very strong, very well done, and since the entire volume has been good up to this point, I have very high hopes for the rest of it. We're not even halfway through with this volume yet, and I'm just blown away with everything that has happened so far. Last time I said I wasn't excited for this episode because of what my expectations for this episode would be. I'm very glad I was so wrong. And now I'm just excited for everything the show has to offer from here on out. I'm excited for the next episode, and then the episode after that, and the episode after that. I'm just very happy with the show so far, and this episode has been amazing. If you like my video, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. And I know this was a lot of me just gushing, but I tried to explain it in a way that, would make sense. I wanted to explain why the episode was so good, and why I loved it so much. So tell me, what did you think in the comments? I'm sure there's at least some people out there who hated this episode, because there's always people who try to find something to hate about every episode, no matter what. But regardless, I really do want to know your opinion, whether it was good or bad or not. Just go ahead, let me know. And I'll see you for the next episode. Bye-bye.